So in today's lesson, it is talking about the real number system. Now you actually haven't learned about any numbers that aren't real. I think you're going to start talking about that in geometry. You're going to start talking about imaginary numbers. But for right now, all the types of numbers that we know are real numbers. So we have our natural numbers, our whole numbers, our integers. Now we use the word integer a lot. Remember, that's a positive or negative counting number. Integers are not decimals. All right, then we have rational numbers. We use that word a lot too. Rational numbers can be written as a fraction or decimal, but it has to end or repeat. And then we have irrational numbers. These are the ones that cannot be written as a fraction or a decimal. They're the numbers that don't end and they don't repeat. So those are our irrational numbers. Notice irrational numbers are out here in a little circle on their own. Irrational numbers they're not the same, right? Integers are rational numbers because they're within that same circle, but irrational numbers are out here on their own. All of these types of numbers, though, are part of the real number system, so they are all real numbers. So let's look at some of these questions. Which of these numbers can be classified as both real and irrational? Well, for right now, every number that we know is real, so we really only have to worry about irrational. Remember, irrational numbers are those numbers that don't end and they don't repeat. So here we have 4.35353535 dot dot dot. The dot 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 means that it does not end, but this one does repeat, right? And we learned just recently that we can write repeating decimals as fractions. So we could take, we have 35 that keeps repeating, so we could take 35 over 99. Since that can be written as a fraction, it is rational, and we're looking for irrational, so that is not our answer. All right, next we're going to check the square root of 25. A lot of you might have this one memorized, but if not, that's fine. Go to your calculator and type in the square root of 25, and that equals 5. That's just a nice, pretty whole number. So that one is not irrational. It's just a nice answer. It's I'll put rational, and we're looking for irrational. Okay, so for the next one, we have the square root of 21. I'm going to go over here again, and I'm going to type it in. Now let's look at this one. This decimal is 4.58257569496 dot dot dot. This answer does not end and it does not repeat. That is going to be irrational. That is going to be our answer. I'm not going to write it all out, but that was a long, non-ending, well, here, I'll write some of it. 4.5825 dot dot dot. So this one is irrational. The last one is 8.94. Anytime we have a terminating decimal or a decimal that ends, remember we can write that as a fraction, and anything that you can write as a fraction is a rational number. Number 2, which of these numbers is both a real number and an integer? Okay, well, all of our numbers are real numbers right now, so we're really just worried about which one is an integer. And remember, an integer is a positive or negative counting number. And it also includes 0. So your integers are like -5, -4, -3, on up, and then you have like 0, and then 1, 2, and so on, okay? And it goes in all these directions. So your integers are your positive or negative counting numbers. So if we look over here, 76, that is an integer. The square root of 63, if you type that in your calculator, that gives you a really long, ugly decimal. So the square root of 63 is irrational. It is not an integer. And then I'm just going to mark this one out. 7.63754. That one looks ugly. That looks irrational, but it's actually rational. Either way, though, it's not an integer because it's not a positive or negative counting number. And 1/3 is also rational, but it is not an integer. We're trying to figure out which one is a positive or negative counting number. All right, which of these is classified as both real and rational? Okay, we know they're all real, but let's talk about the definition of rational. Rational, excuse me, is when you can write it as a fraction is usually kind of what it boils down to. I'll go back here and show you some examples of rational numbers. All of these, they can be decimals or whole numbers or the counting numbers, negative, positive, it doesn't matter. All that matters is that that decimal has to terminate, it has to end. So let's look at these and see which one's rational. I don't know the square root of 20. I'll have to put that in the calculator. I know the square root of 25 is 5. I don't know the square root of 31, and I don't know the square root of 3. So before I even put them in the calculator, I know the only one that has a nice, pretty answer is this one. So that is going to be rational because I can write it as a fraction, 5 over 1. These others are all going to be irrational because if you go and type them in, we're not going to type all of them in, but if you type in the square root of 20, it's a decimal that never ends and never repeats, so that's irrational. If we did the square root of 3, it never ends and it never repeats. That's also irrational. So just because you see the square root symbol, it does not automatically mean it's irrational. You need to solve it and see if it's a nice number or not. Which statement is false? The number 0 is a rational number. Well, that's true. Actually, I should pull this. Let me get this thing so we can all look at these together. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Where did that come from? Ay. Sorry, guys. Copy. Oops. Goodness gracious. Paste. Okay. So we're looking for the false statement. So the number 0 is a rational number. 0 is a rational number. That is not false. That is true. All right. Some irrational numbers are also rational numbers. That is false. If it's an irrational number, it is not in this rational circle at all. Irrational are totally different because irrational means that the decimal doesn't end and it doesn't repeat. And rational means the decimal has to either end or repeat. Those are just completely different. So that one is false. We can go ahead and look at the rest of these though. Every irrational number is a real number. That's true because it's inside this real number square. And then every integer is a rational number. Well, an integer is here and rational is here. Every integer is a rational number. So that's also true. Is the product of the square root of 2 times the square root of 18 rational, irrational, or either? Okay, so we need to just go ahead and figure out if product means multiply. So if we multiply the square root of 2 times the square root of 18, what is that going to give us? Now, I already know 2 times 18 is 36, and when I multiply radicals, if I have whatever's inside, I can multiply them together. So I could rewrite this as the square root of 2 times 18, which is the square root of 36. And some of you already know the square root of 36 is 6. And 6 is one of those nice, pretty numbers, which means that it is rational. But if you didn't know how to multiply those, don't fear, you guys. You know you can go to your calculator and you can type it in there. The square root of 2, get out from underneath, and then do the times the square root of 18. And it just goes ahead and tells you that that is 6. And 6 is an answer that you can write as a fraction, so it is a rational number. Alex received a statement from his bank that listed his checking account total balance as negative $442.50. Well, that's terrible. He is negative. What does this mean? If you have a negative bank account, you are in the red. You owe the bank money. You've spent more than you have. So let's look at the option. The bank owes Alex $42.50. Nope. Alex wrote a check for $42.50 more than the amount of money he had in his checking account. That one makes sense. Let's look at this one. Alex is still able to write a check up to a total of $42.50. No. If you don't have any money left in your bank account, if you're negative, you can't keep writing more checks. The bank deleted why do I keep trying to say 400? I'm losing it. $42.50 from Alex's checking account. No, the bank never deletes money from your checking account. They just store it. You're the one who spends it or adds it to your checking account. So if it's a negative bank balance, that means that you have spent more than you have. And that's it. All right, y'all, good luck on this assignment.